Welcome to the Catholic Leadership Network podcast, helping ministry leaders succeed from the beginning, with your co-hosts, Christy Cabaniss and Sarah Jarzembowski. There we go. Like I swear, I clicked the record button. There we go. It's been a while since we've done record, everybody. Welcome to the Catholic Leadership Network podcast. Here to support ministry leaders from the very beginning. We talk about all the things no one told you about working in the church. So you'll find a grounded place to meet colleagues and get encouraged. We are glad you are here. On today's podcast, we have with us Mr. Mike Hayes. Mike, that's you. That's you. Mike is a candidate for the diaconate in the Diocese of Cleveland, and he serves as the diocese director of young adult ministry. Mike is the co-host of the Question of Faith podcast with Father Damien Forensic. Did I do that right?
No.
I screwed that one up again.
Ferenc.
I even spelled it out
Ferenc,
phonetically. Fluorescence.
Ferenc.
Ferenc. I'm sorry, Father Damien. Father Damien Ferenc. And I even practiced, I promise. So that is 5 questions. No, that is Question of Faith with Father Damien Ferenc. And he's the host of the video series for the Paulist Fathers called 5 Questions with the Paulists. I knew I was going to get that in there. Live podcasting, folks. Mike and I have been friends for forever. So thanks, Mike, for being here at the very beginning of us coming back for this 3rd season and allowing me to mess up your bio here. Mike is one of the founders of Busted Halo. This is where I first met Mike. It's a national ministry, media ministry and Sirius XM radio show coordinated by the Paulist Fathers. For the past 22 years, Mike has worked with young adults in retreat, spiritual direction, and campus ministry. He's the author of 2 books, Googling God by Paulist Press and Loving Work from Orbis. Originally from the New York City area, Mike and his wife Marion now live in Lakewood, Ohio with their dog, Hayes. Oh, Hayes, we love Hayes.
Yeah.
There he is, there's a little picture of Hayes.
Cutie.
Wonderful. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here. I did fine with Christy's intro, but I totally butchered your bio, but that's all right. We're all friends here. You know, that's just the way ministry is, you know.
You butchered my boss's name more than mine, so what do I care?
Father Damien, we're super sorry about that.
You're fired.
I even spelled it out phonetically on my paper, and it didn't work. I should just, I don't know.
Hey, when I was in college, we had a guy on the football team whose last name was Blazejewski, which Sarah, you'll appreciate.
Yes.
And so normally I think you would say that Blazejewski, right?
Yeah.
Blazewski.
Blazewski. There's an F somewhere in there.
And
There's always there's such a weirdness with W's in like Polish and Slovak. Like, yeah. J's also are a problem.
And he was all American and in on every play on defense. So it was like a tackle by Blazewski. So yeah, other broadcasters would be very impressed when we would just sort of rattle his name off, you know?
Nice.
That's amazing.
Oh my goodness. And already we're off the rails, folks.
You'll learn a lot here. A little football, a little pronunciation, a little grammar. You know, it's always good.
There you go. You'll learn a little bit of everything.
Pronunciation is super important when we're talking about online ministry and podcasting and being on the air, right? I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
It is actually. It is. You're absolutely right. We learned that through our journeying together journey about pronunciation and names being very important as a connector piece. Again, not necessarily what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk to Mike Hayes about what we learned, what we could, learn about in ministry and what's really helpful when we first get started. So, and Mike, you do a lot of digital evangelization, and I'm really curious about all of this and hearing your insights, because my parish is going to be hiring a coordinator for digital ministry. Digital evangelization specifically. And I just think it's really profound that, our parish is on the forefront of that. I don't know many parishes that have that as an option. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts about online evangelization and what you wish you knew when you started?
Yeah, good question. I think the thing that I needed to, when I was thinking about this, it's like, well, we started Busted Halo back in 2000 when I told us do something on the internet. And that's literally all the instruction we got.
Wow.
And so what we found out, we said that this is what we thought we were going to do. We said, we're going to take 6 people and they're going to be the driving force of this website, which was kind of like blogging, kind of like we're not really sure what it is, but they were going to be the sort of entertaining, kind of commanding people that people would come back to every day. And so we tested that idea, and people were like, that's kind of interesting. But I go on the internet for information, and I think I've held on to that for like 22 years now. Is that people go on the net for different things, but most of the time they go on there to get the information that they're looking for and then get out. People just don't go on the net to kind of like tool around a little bit. That they go on there, they have an intention. And sometimes that might be to find a church, right? That's one thing, but sort of like, blogs and chats and things like that, that's sort of like ancillary.
I also, do you think that that's old school, Mike? Like that's something like when the internet first got started, that's sort of what it was. But these days it's really like, even I find, I don't know about you guys, but I find these days that like, even something that involves chat is very quick. You know what I mean? Like it's get in, get the details, find out from somebody, connect for an in-person meeting, really more than anything else. And then you're back out of that again. And I know a lot of people, probably 38 and above, that avoid like the social media side of things just because of the dangers that that gets you into.
Yeah. And I think for the social media side, I think I try to think about it now more as like accentuating friendships.
Yeah.
Or even accentuating colleagues, in some way. I have this argument with old students. I said, some friends are colleagues, some colleagues are friends, and some colleagues are not friends. Like Sarah and I are colleagues, but we're also friends.
Aww.
I think.
I'm glad I'm not in that last category you said.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people who they're just colleagues. There's people you work with, but you're not gonna hang out at their house,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that social media is the kind of thing where you're letting people into your network to accentuate the relationship in some way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And to try to deepen that in some way, but then more importantly, I think to deepen it on the other side of that, in the in-person kinds of ways. And I think that's the way it works in church circles too, is that that people are seeking community at times, and they might use that as sort of like a test case to say, well, is this a community I want to be involved in? They might go on a parish website and listen to a homily or see what ministries you have, or look at your prayers of the faithful. That was a big one. I didn't realize that. A lot of people told me that they look at the prayers of the faithful of the parish, and I find out what the parish is really concerned about.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so true. I mean, for me, whenever I'm at mass at a place, I actually haven't seen a whole lot of parishes that post their prayers of the faithful online, but that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also scope a parish through their, like my daughter is a young adult, and when she moved down to Florida, I scoped parishes for her and said, I think you would like this one. I think you would fit in well this one. I don't think that you would enjoy these couple of parishes, based off of the kind of stuff that they had on their website. Gave me an indication of exactly what you're saying, Mike, like what's important to them, what are they highlighting, and I know her personality and what she values, and so I was trying to find a good match for her.
Right, it says a lot about you. So I always tell people, do a little house review of your parish website and say, what would this say to someone who has never been here before?
Yeah.
Would I want to join this parish based on what I see here? And if it looks old, then probably not, if I'm a young person.
Yeah.
It says you don't care. We know you do, right? But it says that you don't.
Well, also like just even keeping things clean, like updated and whatnot. Right. So like if I go onto your parish website and your faith formation registration form is from 2019, or your young adult activities, say something from like 2015, probably not going to hang out with you guys because I'm looking at like, hey, it looks like you're not even involved in these ministries anymore.
Right. Yeah, you haven't done anything since 2015 is what that says.
Yeah. Yikes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, note to self, look at website for young adult ministry activities, because I don't even know on my website.
Well, and on ours right now, on mine, it's outdated and the diocese transferred us over to a newer format, which looks really pretty, but none of the information's been updated and I don't have access to it. So like, that's one of the things right now that, Mike, I'm excited to have this conversation too, because our social media outlets and all of that, and like, I don't have time to do it myself, but that's where I'm hoping to maybe get some like quick tips and tricks that like some of the stuff that you can be putting out on a small potatoes level as well, you know, in addition to like Sarah finding somebody that, I mean, that would be grand if I could even just get an intern that would do it on a volunteer basis. But yeah, so what do you think? How about the pandemic, Mike? I mean, we just came out of everybody being in lockdown and folks not being able to get out much. And so I think that probably online traffic increased exponentially for a lot of parishes. What are some of the things that you feel like we learned from the pandemic with online evangelization?
Two things, a positive and a negative. I'll start with the negative. The negative is kind of any idiot could post on social media, right? I think we learned that real fast.
Yeah.
You know, all kinds of misinformation, all kinds of crazy stuff that's going on, and you got to sort through all that clutter, right? You know, and say, okay, well, what can I trust? Who's like your trusted sources became much more trusted during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because you're like, wait, okay, this person's not crazy, and because I know them, so I can probably trust some of this information at least. Some of this is probably okay. So that's one. And then I think two is that for me as a spiritual director, you know, the number of people seeking retreats and seeking spiritual direction throughout that time certainly increased. I mean, that kind of kept me alive during the pandemic. I mean, from a ministerial point of view, you know, people were still kind of seeking out ways to engage with the church. It's probably at a deeper level than they might have in the normal state of affairs, right? Because we're all locked down. And so some people couldn't get to mass. And look, the live stream is the live stream. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as going to church. I would say, you know, so I looked at St. Paul the Apostle, which was the church I got married in New York City, right? That was my sort of online mass community during the pandemic. I feel a lot closer to the people who I engaged with in the chat every week on there than I do with some people I sit next to at mass every week. You know, it's interesting, like young people a lot of times would tell me, mass is boring, not because mass is boring. Mass is boring because it's a one-way conversation.
Yeah.
Like I don't get the opportunity to, you know, yeah, we get to respond, you know, that's something, but I don't really get to engage back with a homily, for instance, you know, and that's a different kind of thing. Some Protestant communities have tried to rectify that a little bit, and they do like a lot of adult learning stuff. You know, they'll put things up on screens and they'll like, you know, it's sort of like fill in the blank. They'll have the conversation, they'll have their homily, but then there'll be like things to say like what did I just say? So you come away with something. To me, it's kind of condescending, to be quite honest.
Is it a class? I'm not sure.
Yeah, right. It kind of has that feel, right? Wow, this is very touched by an angel all of a sudden.
Oh my goodness.
The Holy Spirit is saying, yeah, say more of that.
That's no way to turn this. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Now it's just gonna like blind people. But yeah, I think those are the things that I kind of learned. I did a lot of like retreats, like online retreats, spiritual direction stuff with our dear friend Becky Eldridge, actually, Sarah. And I think that was one of the best compliments I got was when I first came here to Cleveland. I did an online retreat for our Young Catholic Professionals group that's here. At the end of the retreat, someone said that they didn't say that, but
Charlie.
They said, well, you know, for an online retreat, that didn't suck.
Mhm.
And they're like, that was pretty good. And I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing in this realm now. That's kind of good to hear.
Mike, can I interrupt really quick here? What do you think are the rules of engagement for online spiritual direction, retreats, that sort of thing? Because I heard from some folks like, you can't pray with people online. You can't be in a retreat online. That's crazy. Like they couldn't wrap their heads around how that could be possible. So could you talk a little bit about what that might look like?
Yeah, I think one is that you have to think about what it's like to walk into a retreat house and to try to do all of those little things that you would normally do when people are coming into a retreat house in different ways.
Mhm.
So our friend Nick Stein is really good at this. He had sent out like this big care package to everybody who had registered for this retreat that I did with them. And in the care package, there was the retreat format that we're going to do all weekend, a blanket.
Oh,
right. Some kind of treat or goodie that you would normally get. They had mints in there. I'm trying to think of you get the idea. That they try to make the hospitality elements of a retreat available in a different way.
Awesome.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, Zoom fatigue is real, right?
Yeah.
So people aren't going to sit in front of a screen all day. So you've got to figure out how to maximize the screen time for its effects. So if you're going to give a talk, that talk's probably not going to be an hour. Probably going to be max 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Then there's that, and then the small group stuff that I think can actually happen in that space, but you might want to give people a little bit of quiet time on their own to say, okay, we're gonna either shut your camera off and mute it, and we're gonna spend some quiet time, and I'll pop back on when it's ready, when we're ready to start again. But you can be away from the screen for the next hour, or however long you want to do that, and give them a time to either come back or just tell them, leave your computer on, and you'll hear me, beckon you back. So I think those kinds of things are the balance. And creating, retreats create that liminal space, right? So you have to think about, well, how am I doing that online? How is this a time that's not like work for people who are on Zoom calls all day long, especially then, right? Especially at the height of the pandemic. How do we make this not like that? And so you kind of have to, live it. You're going to have to say, look, this is what we're going to do now. We're going to take some quiet, maybe away from the screen. We're going to do all those things.
Yeah.
And then people get the idea of this is how you do things here. People need more instruction, not less, when it comes to prayer, not just in those spaces, but maybe in, when someone says, teach me to pray, they mean it.
Yeah, literally.
I don't know how to pray.
Spell it out for me. Yeah. Give me instructions. And I think that's just being a parent, one of the things that I've noticed is with kids too, you have to explain things to them and what the expectations are. And adults are actually not different than that. Adults also they want the structure and the guidelines. There's too much and too often that we've left out in the air and just said, just do that. And we're trying to, I think, to the benefit of the people that are saying that, they're trying to not offend or upset or infringe upon the freedom to be able to do whatever you need to do. But people literally don't know how to do it. So it would be like just throwing a bicycle at them and being like, ride the bike, when they have no idea how to balance that or push the pedals or whatever it is.
Right. It's like asking someone to speak Polish.
Just do it.
Just do it. Go ahead. You know how to do
that. That's all I know.
Right. Yeah.
We only know swear words, so we're not going to say.
Oh, we're not going there. We're not going there. We're all right. We're all right. We're all right. Mike, I'm really glad that you brought up that retreat with the Sisters of Bon Secours and Nick Stein. I remember talking to Lauren DeSmit, who's on that team, about those boxes that were sent out and just how she really kind of wrapped her head around the idea of what do we do when we walk into that space, and how do we help people create prayer space at home? I mean, The blanket was brilliant, to like cookies, because we always have a little, get together to kind of ease into it. So cookies and tea and mints on the pillow, these little chocolate mints that we usually do. And, Lauren really walked through that time. And I think that that online is a real opportunity, and I hope we don't lose that. I know there's so many people that are like, oh, we can't, I don't want to do any more on Zoom. There's so much that we can't, that doesn't work right. And I think it just didn't work right for some people because they didn't have a good experience of it. You and I have had some really fantastic experiences online. From, that retreat, I did a couple of other retreats. I did an online workshop with Becky Eldridge. All these people I hope we have on the podcast at some point, because they're all wonderful in their own brilliant ways. And then our journeying together, 2-year process, we finally came together in June, and I hugged people like I knew them. I had never met them in person, but yeah. I hugged them because I felt like we had been friends forever, and really it had only been 2 years and only online. So it was, and it was funny because I was able to remember their names, because on Zoom, it's got their name under their picture. I'm terrible at remembering names. Zoom's a godsend to me because I've got your name under your picture. So I was able to call people by name and everything. And it was just so great. So I do hope that we don't lose this. I actually have had a couple of our senior parishioners come up to me and say, so when are we going to get back to live streaming? Because our digital media person went. And I said, well, I'm in the process of hiring. They're like, because our online community is getting lost. Yeah. And I'm like, you are right. We need to find some people to step in a little bit more diligently during this time. You are right. And they're really concerned for their online friends and community.
Yeah. Wow. Here's another one that I think I learned during the pandemic, and this is the folks at Bellarmine Chapel, just outside of Xavier University there. Mm-hmm. They took all of like the little meetings that they have for like, let's say you're planning a community service event as one example. And you'd gather people together and you'd say, okay, we're going to do this community service event, but we want to teach you about the community before you go. They would do it. They put all of those online.
Oh, wow.
All of them. Not some, all of them. All kinds of meetings that were like that. Their parish council meetings, their finance council meetings, like all those things where you would bring people into the parish for like an hour meeting. They put them all online. People really appreciated it because it cut down on their travel time.
Yes. I think that's one of the other is that people don't realize how really great that was. Now, the other thing is maybe it's to our benefit or detriment. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but the parking lot conversations then get eliminated.
Yes. Yeah, but what they found there, and I should follow up on this because it's been a while since I've talked to them, but what they were finding was that when they actually did meet in person for an event or for real, some more in-depth kind of conversation that they would have in person, that got accentuated a lot more. That people took that not more seriously, that's not the right way, but they engaged with it better, I think is the way I think somebody put it in that group. They're like, yeah, like we really appreciated the time that we had with each other in person, but we got all the little detail work done in a different space that was more effective for us, so that when we were in person, we can get right at it.
Yeah.
So the event was the event. We didn't have to, worry about all these other small things that we would do leading up to it.
Right.
We just went and did the event, and we were focused, and we were together, and we were, it was all those things.
Yeah, and to that end,
careful,
Yeah, to that end, Mike, I think that it's when the parking lot conversation is the meeting after the meeting. I think that what I found from online meetings was that people were, because they were in their own comfortable environment, they said the things that were bothering them at the time during the meeting. There was a new level of sharing that was able to happen in those spaces. And I think because that you're on limited time and this is the focus. And I also think that there's something to be said about the fact that you're in your own home environment and you feel a little bit safer and a little bit more confident. And, there is a screen in between you and the other guy. So he's definitely not going to jump across the conference room table at you if you say something he doesn't like.
And if you find you can't get a word in edgewise in meetings, there's
Yeah.
a chat function that you can type your thing in and say, hey, look,
Exactly.
I want to make sure we get this in.
Yeah, there's just a lot of benefit, I think, to those meetings, and there's some part of me that wishes they would come back a little, not to the extent I was doing them, but you know.
Right.
I love the idea though of having the detail work online and maybe the formation of the team in person. Something that we're starting to focus on is the formation aspect of each of our teams, because we've been running on auto for 2-3 years that there hasn't been formation. So we've been getting the detail work done, but we haven't been forming ourselves into why we do what we do. You know, why do we have service opportunities? Why is liturgy so important to be done well? You know, why do we want to get our altar servers back? You know, why do we want them to be doing all of the altar server things and not just bringing the cross down the aisle? You know, why do we want to do that? You know, so that formation piece, I think, creates in person, creates an opportunity to encounter Christ in each other. But I think, Christy, you really, that detailed work online, it can really check things off. And we can really get a lot done during those meetings. And I did notice that during the pandemic, as we were getting a lot done. But I do think that we were missing the formation piece. I do think we were missing the and the parking lot conversations are interesting, because you're right. Sometimes we say things there that we wouldn't say in the meetings, and that's not necessarily great.
Yeah.
But then sometimes that's really community building and getting to know each other as well.
Yeah.
It's a time for people to dump things to a person that they feel is safe in that space, and to build that relationship, right? So those parking lot conversations, you know, are kind of, they're a blessing and a curse sometimes.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. It's funny, I had a meeting last month, and you know, everybody left the parish hall, and I had dropped something kind of strong, and I looked out my window at the parking lot, and I texted my husband and said, I'm coming home, but I have to walk through the parking lot conversation. We'll see how long it takes me to actually get to my car. Well, I walked out and it just dispersed.
Oh.
And nobody wanted to talk to me. They just all got in their cars and left.
Run for your lives.
No.
The boss is coming and she's going to find out about us.
You know, and it's funny, I got into my car and I went, they all just dispersed. And Paul like texted back an image of like, you know, crickets, or, you know, like everybody run, you know. It was so funny because I wasn't sure what I was going to walk into in that parking lot conversation, you know. But it was good. So anyway, we are kind of coming up on our time here, Mike. Christy and I really wanted to make sure that we were paying attention to people's time and being respectful. We went over a bit last time, and I don't want to do that this season as much. But our last question really is, Mike, what do you wish you had known when you started out in ministry?
Ooh, what do I think? Yeah, so short interactions are often more important than long ones. I think that's something, you know, Sarah, I don't know if you remember Mary Matunis. She was a campus minister at Alvernia, and she tells this great story. So some guy came up to her during a college reunion. She didn't remember him from Adam, and he goes, Mary Matunis. And she was like, oh, hey, guy, how you doing? You know, and he said, you said something to me when I was a junior, changed my life. And she was like, really? Oh, what'd I say? I don't remember, but it changed my life, you know? And I think that was a short interaction. The guy remembered how she made him feel, at least. He may not have remembered exactly what she said, but he remembers that in that short interaction, he was loved by someone, you know? And so I always think like there are small things that, you know, for me, like a lot of the shorter things that I've done on the internet have been far more important. You know, the email that I answered, the time I kind of pushed back a little bit on someone's question and said, you know, why are you asking this question to begin with? And then they were able to kind of open up, and it became more of a pastoral situation than a Q&A. You want to change. I think what I really have come to the conclusion is that most of our relationships are transactional, right? Someone wants something from you, or you want something from somebody else, and we want to turn that around. We want to make it into a committed relationship or a pastoral relationship in some way, as opposed to a transaction. And that could be anything. That could be, from a question to a more pastoral situation, from I'm coming in for my wedding, and we want to make that more of a celebration of your love, as opposed to, hey, give us that $1,000 that you have to pay for the wedding, right?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. I think that's probably the thing that I needed to learn the most. The second thing is a little more, and I learned this from Rocco Palmo, I think, was a good sign that you're doing a good job is when you start to get emails that say two things. The first email you get is when someone says, "You liberal, blah, 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 blah," right? And you're like, well, okay. And then the second email you get right after that is, "You conservative, blah, 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 blah." Then you can say, I think we have something here.
I'm in the middle. Yeah.
That the people are receiving this situation. My boss, Father Damien Ference, is a writer a lot of the times, and he tries to make sure that he writes for things like America Media as well as First Things. And people are always kind of like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, I can't figure him out. I don't know where he is on the spectrum. And he's like, that's because I'm not anywhere on the spectrum. I'm Catholic.
Yeah. Damn.
And I'm like, that's the mark. I think that's a good mark of success.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Any final thoughts, Christy?
No, I was writing notes like crazy, Mike, because you gave us a lot of, like, even in this short amount of time. So thank you so much for your wisdom, your experience, and fun stories too.
Yeah, no problem. This is fun.
This is great. Thank you, everybody, for listening in to the Catholic Volunteer Network. We are talking about all those things that nobody told you about working in Catholic ministry. We learned a lot here today about digital evangelization. Thank you, Mike Hayes. We pray for your ministry out there, and we look forward to reading your books. We've got Googling God, and we've got Loving Work, and we love chatting with you, Mike. Thank you so much. And everyone, we will see you next week on the Catholic Leadership Network podcast. Take care.